Hi everyone, welcome back at Charlotte from Charlotte's House. Today I am working on some Halloween costumes and we are going to attempt to make a no-sew mermaid. Stay tuned. Now, I know you can go to the store and for $30 you can buy an amazing mermaid costume, but what is the fun in that? I'm gonna show you how I'm going to attempt to make a no-sew mermaid costume for my daughter. So the first step for me was going to Joann and picking out all the mermaid looking fabric that I could. I am going to be using a t-shirt, which you see here, that's maybe $2 or $3. I'm gonna be using a combination of these two fabrics. I thought they were really pretty, and these are cotton sort of quilting fabrics, and this is gonna be kind of the structure of the mermaid. And then I also picked up these really, really gorgeous fabrics. This was pretty inexpensive. This was a little more expensive. Obviously, you can choose any fabric that you like, but I thought the combination of these two was very much like a mermaid. So this is going to be the base of the tail, and the only measurements that I took were I wanted to make sure that, assuming the tail comes down from my child's waist, I want to make sure that it doesn't drag on the ground. You'll notice that there is not a fin attached. I have my fin over here. I've already cut that out. So you want to make sure that the tail plus the fin doesn't drag too much. And then the other measurement that I kept in mind was the width of the t-shirt. I actually don't think I'm going to attach the tail to the t-shirt. I think I'm going to attach it to a sash, but I still wanted to make sure that the width of the tail was about the width of the t-shirt. Why? I don't know. So cut out a general tail shape. I looked online just to kind of see how they looked. And then you're gonna wanna put the back of the fabric facing each other. I am going to use just heat and bond hem tape to connect these two along the edge. Heat and bond is really, really easy to work with. And I worked sort of one seam at a time. So you simply put it between your fabric and then obviously follow the directions on the package, but you want your iron set at medium heat, and then you just iron over that hem tape for a couple of seconds and it'll fuse the two fabrics together. It couldn't be easier. So now I have my tail. Okay, now that I have my tail, I need to make some scales. So find just a circular template, trace it onto some paper. You're gonna cut that out. And then what I found was the easiest thing for me was to use a pin. You can see I've already cut out some, but I was able to keep my fabric folded so that I could cut a number of circles at once. And so I just pinned my template right in place. There we go. So you're gonna cut out lots of circles. You wanna play around with your patterns here, but I sort of liked alternating the metallic with the sheer, and I overlapped the edges ever so slightly, maybe by 1 or 2 centimeters. So I dry fit it first, and you want your scales to sort of layer down. So start at the bottom of your tail. Each row should overlap the next by about half as well. But I'm overlapping my rows and I'm overlapping my circles, and I found that that made sort of a nice scale pattern. So I'm just dry fitting it right now, mostly to make sure that I have enough circles, but also just to double check that I sort of like the way it's coming together. Another thing I grabbed that I actually haven't used for this is I grabbed some fray check. I wasn't sure how these fabrics would hold up once I cut them. I've been pleasantly surprised. Once you have your scales all laid out and you know you have enough circles, you're gonna reach for your secret ingredient, and that is fabric glue. I don't know if it matters which one. I am using Fabri-Tac. It's a premium fabric glue. I like that it was clear, and because we're working with this super thin fabric, I think a clear makes the most sense. I didn't want my scales to curl up on the edges, so instead of just doing a single dot under each one, I actually went ahead and I did more of a stripe of glue. But again, I don't think it makes a whit of difference. I just found that this secured mine. And then I did add a little more glue on the edges, just so when I overlapped the sheer, the glue was gripping it. Okay, the top of the mermaid is sort of fun. So I looked around online and I made a shell template, and we're gonna line the shells up. So I'm gonna have one here and one here, because that's what you see on a mermaid, right? I am using 3D fabric paint, and I'm going to trace over both of these. And the only tip I have for this is that you want to be aware of your arm. So I try to work sort of from one direction to the next, but at some point you just have to be careful. If you make a mistake, you should be able to go back with a needle and just carefully lift the paint off of the fabric. All right, I'm gonna leave that to dry. It should take about 4 hours. Ready to go. I'm back the next day and I'm ready to finish off my mermaid. So here is the tail. You can see that the scales have dried. I love this. It is so cute. So the only two things we have left is we need to figure out a way to attach some ties to the tail as well as the fin. So let's hop over to the fin. So for the fin, you just want to make sure that the top of the fin lines up with the bottom of the tail. So I folded my fabric in half, so the top of the fin is actually where the fabric is folded. I found that it was easier to have a symmetrical fin, and then I'm gonna go around the perimeter of the fin with that same heat and bond, and I believe I started up here. I'm adding one to the fold just so that there's a little bit of stability. And then you're simply gonna work your way around. Obviously, if you want to sew, you can sew a piece of fabric around the top of the mermaid tail to make a sash, but I'm not sewing. So here is my no-sew way of doing it. This is just a piece of remnant fabric, so I'm quickly going to fold it about 1.5 inches down, and I'm going to iron the seam, and then I'm going to reach for, you guessed it, my hem tape. This hem tape is about 3/4 inch wide, so I'm going to measure about 1 inch for the sash, and I couldn't find my fabric marker, so I'm using some chalk. Honestly, a pencil would work too, because I'm going to cut inside that line. All All right, now I am a numbskull and I don't have any fabric that is long enough to be an entire sash. So I'm making 2 sashes so I can put one on either side of the mermaid tail. But if you had a longer length of fabric, I think that would be preferable. All right, here's my tail. So I'm gonna flip it over. And I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac, or any fabric glue really. And I'm going to attach the sash, or the 2 ties. I'm going to glue about 2 inches in. Now, just to finish off the tail, I'm going to glue a row of scales. So I'm putting half like that, and then I'm gonna fold it right over this rough fabric edge, and it just finishes it a little bit. You may need to go across and trim any fabric that's hanging over the top. But now I'm gonna start and I'm gonna glue these scales right over that raw edge. So now the only thing left is adding our fin. And I just glued it in place. I figured the glue was probably a little sturdier than the iron-on hem tape. I probably overlapped it about 1 inch.